Welcome to the Life Self-Mastery Podcast, where we bring in entrepreneurs who have created online businesses and improved their lifestyles. Here's your host, Rohit Malhotra.
Hi everyone, this is Rohit from Life Self-Mastery, and today I'm excited to have Mr. Ajeet Khurana, who's a founder, investor, and earlier the CEO of Zebpay. Ajeet had been a founder of KITS and has an experience of 28 years and was an alumni of University of Mumbai and has done his MBA from University of Texas. Welcome to the show, Ajeet.
Thanks for having me, Rohit.
Awesome. So how did you get into entrepreneurship, and what got you excited to be in this world of blockchain and cryptocurrency?
Two separate questions, but I'll just tell you that after I became entrepreneur and people ask me this question as to should I be entrepreneur? Why did you become entrepreneur? I came up with relatively intelligent, interesting sounding ideas to respond to the question. But the fact is that when I got into entrepreneurship, it was the only thing I could think of. It wasn't as if I was thinking of like five things. Should I be an entrepreneur? Should I study further? Should I take up a job or any of those? My senses, imagination was completely captured by, setting up something and creating it and growing it and making it like really big. So that is the complete and honest answer. In hindsight, one, retrofits certain reasoning, and I can do that, but this is the most honest answer I can give. As far as why blockchain, so I basically got into Bitcoin in September of 16. I was really thinking of it as Bitcoin, not as cryptocurrency and not as blockchain, right, at that point of time. But if you go back to 93 and when I started my career all the way up to today,
right,
one of the things that has been common, and I don't say this either to blame myself for it, nor to give myself credit, but the fact is that I've always been fascinated by the next new thing. So always the earliest adopter of email, the first few people to sign up for the internet access when it was available by VSNL in Mumbai, and e-commerce or what have you, in peer-to-peer lending, I was the first few people to lend, obviously lost a lot of that money, etc. So I've always been with the most innovative thing. In fact, recently, for example, there are a lot of these new software packages that keep coming out, application software. I even pay to learn how to use those, which is, I hear, not a very common thing even at this age. So cryptocurrency, right since 2014, I shouldn't say cryptocurrency, I should say Bitcoin, was attracting me because of its wild price movement. And I was like, what the hell is this? So when in 2014, I first started looking closely at it, and I understood, okay, so this is some sort of money. Some people say e-money, some people say e-gold or whatever. And then I looked closely, and because I've always been associated with finance in the classic sense of the term, I saw it and I said, what nonsense is this? There's no way in hell such a thing can ever happen in this world. Right. And I rejected the notion. Well, history caused me to suffer that decision, right? Well, I would probably have like Bitcoin. I don't know what the price was then, but probably it was like much less than $100 if I'm not mistaken. Right. So then I kept ignoring it, and once again, it would keep bubbling up and I would notice it. And then I did the Coursera course on it. I said, I've got to figure this thing out. I figured out the blockchain element. I figured out the decentralization element of it, which while I knew it from day one, had not caught my attention. And I was like, while I am not in a position to assign a probability to how likely is it whether this thing will work or not, but I must say it's a fascinating new world. And it does present some sort of an alternative way of thinking. I'm not referring to it as alternative currency, but an alternative way of thinking where, so many things have got democratized. Why can't money get democratized? Why can't we have a people's money as opposed to people are, organizing a set of representatives who decide what money should be? So I got fascinated by that idea. I put in 1,000 rupees literally to buy whatever was a fraction of Bitcoin. I think it was around 40,000 rupees at that point of time. And I got some fraction of it. And then I sold it to see if I get the money back, just to make sure that, because most of the world was referring to it as vaporware or some sort of scam or some sort of Ponzi scheme at that point of time. Words, luckily, we don't hear too much of nowadays. So I got my money back also. And then I said, hey, this is interesting. And shortly thereafter, I purchased some more. And then it went up so high that it became something like, I think, 80,000 rupees. And I was like, my God, can it go higher than this? People are, of course, even then talking about how one Bitcoin would become $1 million, which I think some people still do, but not as many as 2 years ago. Especially because John McAfee, who was the one who had placed that bet, is no longer committed to that number. But having said that, it got me very interested. I studied it. I went to every platform around it. I saw what people were trying to build on top of it in the form of some sort of a neo-banking setup. I went to discussion forums. I talked to people about it. And then, but up to this point, I was just an enthusiast, right?
Right.
And I think around August of 17, that's correct, August of 17, I met a guy I knew way back when he was in his earlier startup called Sandeep Goenka. So he was Ahmedabad based at that point, was visiting Mumbai and came and told me that, hey, can we catch up at Starbucks? I said, sure. He met me and said, you know what, I have set up this startup called Zebpay. We are doing exceedingly well, growing very fast. And then he listed some of the things, that any cryptocurrency exchange in India would have a concern. And he just wanted to bounce some ideas off me because in his earlier startup also, he had bounced some ideas off me, though we had not talked to each other for years after that. And one thing led to the other. They were setting up, I think they were making a second or third attempt to set up an industry body. This time it was under the aegis of the Internet and Mobile Association of India called BACC, which is the Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Committee. I was chosen to join as its head. And so on 1st Jan or 2nd Jan of 2018, I joined as that. Continued in that role for about 2.5 months only. Okay. At which point of time, Zebpay, who was frankly bearing all of my economic cost and, my pay was coming from Zebpay really, turned around and said that, listen, we would rather have you work completely for Zebpay than for the industry body. If you want, you can continue with the industry body, but we are not going to continue the same relationship. So we will be one of the exchanges in the industry body, not the main one that supports you. So I chose to join Zebpay. In fact, so first I slipped into blockchain from Bitcoin. Then I slipped into the blockchain and cryptocurrency community because I met an old friend. And from there, I slipped into Zebpay. So I'm wondering if directly I had an offer from Zebpay, I don't know how that would have panned out. Much better, much worse, or probably the same. Then a few days after that, RBI came out with its circular. Just imagine like few days. I think like 13 or 14 days, they made an announcement and 5-6 days later, they came up with the circular. So life went on a complete roller coaster ride. We tried to work on it, got into the Supreme Court action thing in like about a month from then, maybe a month and a half. Did a lot of things eventually in September, closed operations in India. At that point of time, I resigned from Zebpay and went to a holding company in Singapore. And I became CEO of the company which gives the license for Zebpay. And did that for like 15 odd months, maybe 16 odd months. And now I'm back in India.
Very interesting. But, I still remember in 2018 when this directive came from RBI that you're not supposed to, you can't buy cryptocurrency. And all the exchanges got shut down. Some really sad stories came out from other exchanges where, people had to fire their employees. How did you go through this challenge? Because, this is a very critical time going across the world, especially, with the COVID-19 situation. What were your learnings? Because you've actually been through those 15, 16 months, went through that challenge and you've successfully come out of it.
So I'll tell you first, you should know that I'm no longer with Zebpay. Right. So I'm not going to be in any way speaking on behalf of them. It would be unreasonable of me to do so. Absolutely. But just 2 quick points before I directly answer your question. First is that the difference between the RBI situation and the COVID situation is that the COVID situation is upon us. There's no doubt. It is not that we are hearing that there might someday be a virus which may come to India. While in the RBI situation, first when it came, we thought we could, turn it around, talk to people. So there was a slow acceptance of how severe that problem was. Right. Because we kept thinking maybe this can be done, maybe crypto to crypto can be done, maybe there's some alternative mechanism, etc. Right? Somebody said maybe we can buy gift vouchers, as in variety of things. In the COVID situation, I think it has just come and hit us on our head, and there's no doubt as to the business downturn. Now, I think that in this scenario, there are only 3 things that can be done, and now I'm answering the COVID situation.
Correct.
The obvious one is cut costs.
Correct.
Right? As in that, I think goes beyond any doubt. The only thing is that, when you cut costs, so for instance, if a startup is like now 5-6 years old, I think that they might have built some strengths that they can tide over for the next year or two. If a startup is starting today, I think they could just change the model to just using open source software, just using freelancers. I don't know, using some creativity to have very low cost. But if a startup started, let's say mid 19, right, and maybe raised some money and just got going by around December 19 or so, these are the ones I think are going to be a worst hit because they evolved a model, just got started, have not built any strength. They are going to be hurt. So it is very easy for me to say cut costs, but it is not as if it's easy to cut costs really. Second thing is that because creativity and imagination is going to have to come into picture, you can't just cut cost at all costs. Your relationships with everybody, whether it's vendor, supplier, customer, landlord, employee, etc., are all going to have to change. Right? For instance, let us say you still need pretty good employees and you don't have the budget for them. Then, we have always been talking of stock options while frankly, in the last several years, I have not come across too many examples of companies being able to use the potential, harness the potential of stock options, fundamentally because of how taxation, etc., works in India. Okay. But now is the time to relook at those because people are losing jobs. So employment is also a problem. At the same time, you need great people. So there might be an opportunity to match make them. And last but not the least, since my entrepreneurial journey started in, late 93 or you could say early 94, I must tell you, I have seen waves of employees being available or unavailable. My worst period probably was the 2006-7 period where you just could not hire anybody. Like salaries were shooting up, people would accept a job and not show up because they'd taken another job, etc. I think we are completely on the other end of the spectrum. And we are seeing that there might be good talent available at relatively lower cost than what one expected even a year ago. So maybe this could be of some use. So these are some of the thoughts. But frankly, if the if the tide is not rising, the tide is sinking, it is very difficult to get a boat to rise.
Right. Absolutely. And, I wanted to talk about blockchain in India, with the RBI directive in March, that, it is legal to buy cryptocurrency and, things really looked well for startups like WazirX and, along with Binance, they've raised a $50 million fund. What are the sort of, opportunities you see in the next coming months or years for Indian entrepreneurs to build blockchain companies or around cryptocurrency?
So I must just point out one little thing, though that's not really a question, right, that the RBI circular had nothing to do with the legality or the illegality of buying or selling crypto. RBI never said it is illegal. RBI frankly is not a lawmaker, right, to be able to say such a thing. RBI said you can't use bank accounts for entities that are licensed by us to buy and sell. At the same time, the Supreme Court verdict also has not come around and said anything about the legality of it. They have just said that RBI probably, and I'm obviously oversimplifying, it's a very long judgment, but RBI probably, overextended itself in coming up with this and maybe other measures could be brought about. So the circular was cancelled. So it is a gross oversimplification to the point of actually creating a wrong impression to say that at some point it was made illegal, or for that matter, the opposite, that at some point of time it has been made legal. The legality, however good or bad it was, has not changed either with the circular or with the Supreme Court judgment. Having said that, I'll answer your question directly. Right. And your question was about where do we go from here? See, I think there are two, any industry tends to have its champions. Like if you think about the IT industry and how India became the IT, great superpower for IT, I think that if you go back to when NASSCOM was formed, now I think is 27 odd years ago, and how there was this guy called Devang Mehta who's now passed away, so his name is not very popular anymore, passed away very long time ago. Yeah. So he was the champion of NASSCOM, and NASSCOM was a champion of the industry, and they really moved heaven and earth to make India the superpower that it was. And according to me, there is no parallel in any other industry in India which has managed to do this. Right? And I shudder to think that had there been no Devang Mehta, had there been no NASSCOM, whether things would have reached this point. Now, what has happened in the blockchain space in terms of the many champions that exist is that I believe there are three things that are really going wrong.
Okay,
which are okay. Now, obviously, from the other end, also government and media and things could be much better. But I'm saying that, I can't control the government, I can't control the media, but I can control myself.
correct.
So at least I should do the right thing. So I think there are three things that we are doing wrong. And this, by the way, could be the highlight of this podcast that we are recording, because this is very, very important. Number one is that probably for personal popularity or the fact that it gives them a lot of social media attention, a lot of champions take a very strong anti-establishmentarian view of blockchain. Like the likes of, they will say down with banks, down with RBI, down with the government, down with everybody except blockchain, right?
Right.
And now the problem is they have to go to these same people to get the permissions, to get the policies, to get the law, right? So it does not create a very harmonious way of working.
Right.
Now, if you are going to go to a island in South America and set up your own country and do all that, great, more power to you. Would be interesting to see. Apparently somebody has done that. But if you are saying I want to exist within the Indian legal, tax, financial, banking system and still keep saying down with all of those guys, it is not the best way. Number two is that when you will talk intellectually with a lot of these people, and of course they are brilliant people, they will talk about blockchain, they talk about how it is the future, how it is the internet of money, how it is a platform on which apps will be built, layer 2 technologies, lightning network, blah, blah, blah. But when the Bitcoin price starts going up, all they want to talk about is the price. Right? Now, what happened to all that technology? Or for that matter, if the price falls down to the blockchain technology, become less valuable. So I think there are very few champions in the world who don't get swayed by the price of Bitcoin. Right? As in, they focus on the underlying change it is going to bring to all humankind.
Correct.
Right? And I think that this extraordinary focus on price of one cryptocurrency or cryptocurrencies in general just takes away from the entire value that this paradigm could bring in. And the third and final thing, which I think probably of these three gripes that I have, I think is the only one that is likely to get set right very soon, because it is an obvious need of the hour, is I think that players within this space have not worked very well with each other.
Okay.
Right? Probably because many of them are first-time entrepreneurs with zero or close to zero industry experience. I don't know whether, because I don't know. Then I can just speculate. But the fact is that while if you take the IT services company, the Wipro, the Infosys, the TCS, and variety of others, they would fiercely compete in the marketplace to get orders predominantly from US customers in the 90s.
Right.
But they would also very well present themselves as an industry group when representing themselves to the government and regulators in India to help the policy frameworks to be created such that they can be globally competitive. So while you are competing on one hand, on the other hand, you need to still know that we are all in it together. So three quick points. One is the extraordinary, the very strong anti-establishmentarianism, which actually does bother the establishment. Put yourself in their shoes. Second is the extraordinary focus on price as opposed to all the, amazing opportunities. And third, not being able to behave like an industry. I think these have hurt us. Beyond this, if we can get some of this together, then there's just so many application areas that could open up.
Right. And do you foresee, industries like real estate, especially, and, other media industry, which can be helped by, blockchain technology? Because that was what Ethereum idea was, that, it's not about money to money transfer. It's more about, changing the ecosystem of the real estate industry or the law industry. Any thoughts on
So I think that, just to be specific, I don't think we are talking of real estate, but we are talking of land records, which I know is related. So very simply, even the blockchain technology as it exists today, I'm not talking of like futuristic when we'll have flying cars and space travel. I'm talking of as it exists today and has existed for several years now. It is very conducive to being a decentralized autonomous system of authenticating of documents. Just as an example, suppose you have a document, a degree certificate, an Aadhaar card, a PAN card, whatever you have, and you have to use it somewhere to open some sort of account, to get a job, to travel abroad, etc.
Right.
But typically they'll tell you to authenticate it. This could be as big as getting a notarization stamping done, or self-attesting, or some form of authentication. Now, all of these methods of authentications are flawed. If you think about it, if somebody puts a notary stamp, then is that person really a notary? Did that person really check? All of those questions remain. And while some countries have done a very elaborate system to ensure that an authenticated document is indeed authenticated, the fact is that these are all very, very difficult, old world systems. With the blockchain, you just, at the source of the document, the first time the document is issued, whether it's your degree certificate, Aadhaar card, or whatever, let's say your agreement of purchase or sale of land, etc. If we had it in digital form, let's say a PDF file or any other such form, we hash it. And for your listeners who do not know what a hash is, it's some form of a fingerprint of the digital document. And we record it with a timestamp on the blockchain, such as the Ethereum blockchain or the Bitcoin blockchain. Now it is immutable. Like tomorrow, if somebody wants to, even the issuer wants to say, I didn't issue it. Even that is no longer possible because it's written on that blockchain. And here is my degree certificate. You can take the hash of it and compare it with the hash or the signature which was put on a particular day, particular time. And this document existed at that point of time. And this is how its provenance was, or this is how it was issued. So this, wherever it comes, whether it's financial documents, whether it is real estate, land ownership records, whether it is bank records, ownership of any asset, any transaction, whether it is will, probate, marriage certificate, any of those, I think that is like a beautiful use case. But you must know that going back to, so I did my computer engineering between 87 and 91. So computers were just getting to be popular. People didn't have computers at home for sure. So we had this one saying that we would tell everybody who would, talk to us about computer bugs and computer errors and why is the computer not working. So we as oversmart, smarty pants kind of engineers used to always tell them that a computer never does what you want it to do. A computer only does what you tell it to do. Right. So likewise, if right at the origination point, a fake document is hashed onto the blockchain, nothing can be done. Right? If a university fails to upload it to the blockchain. So naturally, this presents the opportunity to solve the problem, but it's not a magic wand. As in, if you don't have a digital document, nothing can be done. If the fake comes and creates a claim first, it's just like a trademark, patent, etc. as to who came first. Sometimes these things are practically very difficult to get. So we have the technology already. We need to have the system and mindset in place, and then it can work.
Right. And are there any Indian companies which are already using, blockchain technology and, started doing work on that?
Okay, so I must now at this stage point out that fundamentally, while we could come up with many shades of gray, but a simplistic way of viewing the blockchain paradigm is that there are two types of blockchains: the public blockchain and the private blockchain.
Okay.
Right. This is very important to answer your question of are there Indian companies doing certain work already. A public blockchain, such as let's say the Bitcoin blockchain, is something that nobody owns, nobody influences unduly. And basically it belongs to everybody or anybody who chooses to run a Bitcoin software node, right? A private blockchain would be that I could, for example, program a blockchain. I'm, let's say, for example, a bank, and then I go to some other banks and say, hey, listen, let's adopt this blockchain. We own it. It runs on our servers. We influence how it works and what the algorithm is, and it may or may not be open source. Right. So as far as private blockchains are concerned, because they do not suffer from the paradigm shift that decentralization brings in, I have seen a lot of initiatives. And frankly, if I try to extend my imagination, I can definitely think of some uses of the private blockchain. But, it's a little crazy when you think about, I'll draw a parallel with cloud computing. Okay. When cloud computing first came in and people started understanding that there could be, servers absolutely anywhere, which would be elastic and, virtually limitless and those kind of things, everybody loved the idea. And then when, these cloud providers presented it to, let's say, banks or other institutions, they said, hold on a minute. Are you saying that all my data will now be sitting on your computer?
Right.
And they said, no way. Please put up a cloud inside my office.
Right.
Right. So that would be like a private cloud. Now, by the way, there can be a entirely private cloud setup, right? For instance, when Amazon was doing its cloud-based architecture, before offering it to the world as AWS or Amazon Web Services, that was exactly what it was, a private cloud. Then they realized that we have this great thing in place. Why not allow people to subscribe? And the rest, as they say, is history. But organizations said, give me private cloud, man. And then that sounded like, what do you mean by private cloud? Right? As in, while you can create a private cloud architecture with redundancies, elasticities, but it does not, the joy of cloud computing doesn't come into the picture. And today there are many organizations who have what is called a hybrid structure, where some elements are stored here, some are put on public clouds, and that makes the hybrid. And blockchain also is likewise. Everybody loves the nature of blockchain, but then they say, please set up a blockchain in my office. And because this gives a lot of work to consulting companies and IT companies, those companies are always very happy to take blockchain related orders. And a lot of companies which have made earlier initial exploratory, pilots or prototypes have now started wondering, what is the big thing with blockchain? Our older system was so much better than this. Blockchain makes everything slow. Right. And why should we have blockchain at all? Because that is because they're exploring the private blockchain to do the functions of the public blockchain.
Right.
I think that lack of complete understanding is being exploited by people who actually understand, but will often be found saying things like, "Oh, cryptocurrency we don't like, but blockchain we like." Right. And unfortunately, while I don't blame those people, because those people have probably some vested interest, maybe, my problem is that people in the cryptocurrency industry also tend to take a fairly extreme view where they'll only focus on the price of cryptocurrency and always keep forgetting the underlying blockchain architecture and how it is going to or has the potential to change the world. So to answer your question, a lot of private blockchain initiatives have been put in place. Very few companies have tried to use existing public blockchains to build technologies on top of. And that is because, they've sensed pretty much like the government senses or institutions set up sense the lack of control. Likewise, companies also would sense a lack of control because they have not written that blockchain.
Correct. And what are your thoughts on Libra? And do you think digital companies like Facebook, Google, Amazon, should they have their own cryptocurrencies for that matter?
So we'll answer it in two different ways because unfortunately, like for example, when Facebook announced Libra, if you had talked to people who were somehow associated with cryptocurrency and simply asked them, is this good for Bitcoin or is this bad for Bitcoin? Right. We had equally strong opinions in both because see, the fact is that on the one hand, there is a technology. On the other hand, there's an organization like Facebook, which people have a certain opinion of. Correct. Right. So there are so many variables that come in, but I would like to view this in two ways. First, if you ignore the blockchain or cryptography element of it, a lot of stored value kind of currency places exist, right? For example, PayPal. People are holding an account with PayPal, right? Right. And, depending on which territory we are talking about, many places a PayPal account is like a bank account as the money is sitting there. Correct. Right. So now, would we say that if somebody has $10 in a PayPal account, those are 10 PayPal dollars? Or they are 10 US dollars, or 10 US dollars are put in and now have become PayPal dollars. These are levels of abstraction. Ultimately, you are trusting PayPal to hold those $10 for you. Correct. Right? If PayPal had said, hey, I am holding it in the form of PayPal cryptocurrency, it would say in my mind be $10 as long as I put in 10 and I get 10. What has happened with a lot of this cryptocurrency is that a new asset has been created. Right. As opposed to, let's say, 100 rupee, whether it's in my note, whether it's in my Paytm wallet, whether it's in my HDFC bank, it's 100 rupees of equal value. Now, instead of this, if I had gone and purchased gold of 100 rupees, now a 100 rupee note and gold worth 100 rupee will diverge in value one way or the other over a period of time. So this creation of a new asset is what is the question. Now, Facebook Libra was not that. Facebook Libra was something like what you would like to call a stable coin. Oh, okay. What that means is that in the US, one Libra unit, I don't know if they were calling it Libra unit, but one Libra unit would be $1. And it would always be the case. So it was not creating a new asset. It was creating a new network on top of which all of these things would run. And if it was in Switzerland, then it would be one Switzerland currency unit. If it was theoretically in India, one Libra unit would be one Indian rupee. So that sort of cryptocurrency is, if you think about it, though it is using cryptography, if you go to a food court in a mall, and there are some food courts where you have to first go and buy coupons. So you don't give money to the food counter. You go and buy coupons, let's say 10 coupons of 10 rupees each. Now you want to buy ice cream, which costs 50 rupees. So you give him 5 coupons. Right. Actually, it is the same thing. This is exactly what Libra was. Of course, it was not a paper coupon. It was based on a certain technology. But the fact is, this is what it was. You give money, they transfer it to a 1:1 equivalent token that they gave you. And later, if you want to transfer it back because you have some vouchers remaining, you again go to the counter and say, hey, listen, 3 of my 10 rupee coupons have remained. Here it is, and he'll give you 30 rupees back. So in its basic form, a stable coin is just that. Now, the controversy arose because first, stablecoin themselves have a little, people always have a doubt that if you have given away coupons worth 100 rupees, do you still have the 100 rupees? What if somebody came back? What if you don't have it anymore? And second, because now you have to submit all your information, and it's not just the information you give at the KYC process, but also all your transaction information, your money related habits that gets known to these organizations, whether they can be trusted to keep this. But otherwise, a Facebook Libra or organizational money, JP Morgan coin or whatever you want to call it, isn't really cryptocurrency in the sense that it creates a new asset which is uncorrelated to the asset that it was to start out, like Bitcoin. You buy Bitcoin with a fiat currency, and then fiat currency goes in one direction and Bitcoin goes in the other direction. These are not those, right? So I think that as long as it is just a system of accounting, which is, as they say that money has 3 characteristics. It's a medium of transaction, a store of value, and a unit of account. So what we created here was a unit of account. They're obviously facilitating transactions and obviously storing value. But as long as a unit of account, I don't think that by itself it is a very valuable thing. In the sense, it's not worth too much debate. The debate really came because the debate of cryptocurrency really comes because it tends to bypass the fiat system. Tomorrow, Facebook Libra might also decide to do that. Well, theoretically, I don't think the project is really taking off. But at the present stage, Facebook Libra was just a stable coin.
Right. And what about the debate that, cryptocurrency is an asset and not a currency? Do you think it's like an asset, but it's not, it can never be a different form of a currency?
So, you asked a question and then you asked me a more extreme form of the same question. First, you said it's an asset, not a currency. And then you say it's an asset, but can never become a currency. So my answer actually changed between your 2 versions of the question.
Because there is a lot of confusion, because some people say it's currency.
No, I get it. See, the thing is that if you look at how currency is defined, I have found that in all countries, there is some definition, some law that governs currency, sometimes more than one law, right? In light of that, cryptocurrency is not going to ever come into that because in all of those cases, the currency is issued by a central agency, such as the central banker, RBI in India, for example, and is monitored by a group of people who are authorized to monitor it. Cryptocurrency is not either of those. So to that extent, it is not currency, absolutely, because that is how we have defined it, right? So I define that I am Ajeet. Right? So, are you Ajeet? No, because I have defined that I am Ajeet. So, you will always be something else. You will be a Rohit. Because the definition is a self-fulfilling definition. Correct. Now, the question is whether cryptocurrency can be used as currency. I want you to understand in 2 ways. So, you meet me, you have a motorbike and I have a gold ring. And I tell you, hey, listen, I want to buy your motorbike. I'll pay you with my gold ring. Right? And you say, I accept this transaction.
Right.
Have we done anything illegal? The answer is no. As long as you disclose your sale and the income you have made and I disclose my purchase and the payment that I made, I think we have not done anything illegal. We did not use currency, if you noticed. However, we used gold as if it was currency. And in doing so, we did nothing wrong because it was effectively a barter. Correct. Right. Now, this is not commonly done. As in, I don't know of anybody who has given a gold ring to buy a motorbike, primarily because of the impracticality associated with it. But what if instead of gold, it was something which is more measurable, like Bitcoin. See, in gold, I would not know the purity. I would not know how to store it. I would always be worried about if, tomorrow you deny it because you will not show that you gave it to me or any of those kind of things. You can also be worried that I might ask for my motorcycle back and say, what gold, you never gave me gold, etc. So if there was a digital asset which is completely traceable, has a ledger which can be checked and verified by everybody, I think that buying of motorbike using the gold ring could be more realistic then, right? Like for instance, suppose I were to give you 100 shares of HDFC Bank and you give me a motorbike in return, because now the motorbike would have certain registration documents, leave a trail. The HDFC Bank share price would leave a trail, and probably we can have an email exchange. I think this transaction could be done. So assets can be used in the format of currency, and this specific asset, namely Bitcoin, actually has been structured such that it can become a medium of transaction, right? So can it be used? Yes. Is there anything illegal about it? Well, if the asset itself is not illegal, then just like I gave you the example of using gold to buy a motorbike or HDFC shares to buy a motorbike, actually it could be done here also. Now, whether it will have the blessings of the formal system of finance, whether banks would accept, for example, deposits in Bitcoin or other such, whether you can pay taxes in Bitcoin, some countries of the world or provinces at least are accepting payment in cryptocurrency. It's very interesting. But would that happen? Now, that is where policy and regulations come into picture. And that bit is the weakest end of the cryptocurrency paradigm. Because on the one hand, without that, very major institutions or very major efforts cannot be taken underway. On the other hand, currently the way this is being presented, there are very few countries in the world. It's a small single digit number or a single digit number at most, which is encouraging of cryptocurrency. There are a few dozen more that are tolerant of cryptocurrency, and the vast majority of them actually are pretty intolerant of cryptocurrency, at least when it comes to starting to jeopardize the financial system. So I think that we have to come to a place where the coexistence of the old and the new is possible, because both present some advantages. Then of course, which wins over the other, time will tell.
Right. Interesting. You talked about countries who might or might not favor, but there are a lot of news about China, which is trying to replace cash with digital yuan. You think that could happen, considering?
I think every country has a digitization spree on everything. Their records are being digitized, their government processes are being digitized, and very much so their money is being digitized. Like if when demonetization came in earlier, it was to bring back black money or any of those kind of things, but eventually it started becoming a less cash or cashless kind of system and digital money, and government is very encouraging of that, and for obvious reasons, because digital money tends to leave a trail.
Right.
Physical assets or physical money, theoretically, it could also leave a trail in certain cases, but you can also have no trail. So as a result, digitization of that which can be digitized is a very good idea. Now, India is also on the same street. It's not just a Chinese example. The question, however, is, I'll give you an example. Same thing that I said earlier, the 100 rupee note in your pocket, in your bank account, in your Paytm wallet, all are exactly 100 rupees.
Right.
Because you've not converted it to a non-correlated asset.
Correct.
If, however, you purchase like a cryptocurrency not issued by the central banker, not pegged, then we have a very different scenario. That is what the Bitcoin paradigm is testing in the world.
Correct. And you've been part of a cryptocurrency exchange. How do you keep your cryptocurrency not getting stolen from your phone, or what are the best ways people can keep cryptocurrency with them and not get hacked?
So the thing is, here's the thing. I have to tell you that I'm not in any way, like, you began your question by saying that you've been part. I'm in no way talking about that, because I'm not employed by them. I'm not authorized to be their spokesperson. And for all I know, they are doing things differently than when I was there. So I'm not giving you that. But I can still answer your question. Here's the thing. There is this slogan which says, you don't control the private key, so you don't have the money. Now, that might be a little too technical for people to get what I'm saying, but the entire paradigm of cryptocurrency, one of its 2 or 3 strongest features is that it is empowering people. That means people can become their own bank, people can become their own central bank for that matter. Right. In light of that, people have to be responsible for their own money. So tomorrow, for instance, you go to HDFC Bank and you open a bank account and then you lose everything. You even forget your account number. Well, things are traceable. You have a net banking password and login ID and you forget those. Well, it can still be traced. But if you are holding your own coins and you lose the private keys, that means let's call it loosely the password, the cryptocurrency is gone forever. There's nobody you can go to. As a result, what people do, because they don't like this, and this is not how they operate in real life, they go and let somebody else hold the cryptocurrency for them, such as an exchange. Right? Or whatever, some such mechanism where somebody else holds it. So there is some recourse, like tomorrow if you lose the phone on which you had stored your something and that is gone, blah, blah, blah. Now the problem is that while this is doable, but now you're trusting a third party with this. Right? So that is a very, very big problem. And it is not as if the other guy could be malicious. Well, the other guy could be malicious. It could also be that the other guy is careless. It could also be that the other guy is unlucky. Right? So in light of that, you have to learn to store your own coins. But if you do not, there are some ways in which, there are intermediate solutions available, and that's just a little too advanced for anything less than a dedicated, session for that. But easiest thing, cleanest thing, use a hardware wallet, paper wallet, or some such method to hold your own coins. If that is too technical for you, find out providers such as BitGo who will have your wallet, but at the same time, the keys will be with you. I'm oversimplifying this. When you look closer, you'll understand what the exact scenario is. And if not even that, then you can probably have some sort of custodian take care of it, and an exchange can also be the custodian. The last one is, of course, the least preferred.
Oh, got it. But I think what I've seen is a physical ledger wallet is what people are using to store the coins.
Yeah, so you mean like a ledger or a Trezor, or now there are other ones also. Yes, I have seen that. So see, there are pros and cons of absolutely everything. What that does, that ledger or Trezor, etc., do is effectively become your signature. Right? The equivalent of, instead of putting a password, you put that in. So everyone has pros and cons. People have to really learn this bit. And I think that the fact that people don't know how to store their own coin and they have to trust some third party is one of the reasons that has prevented far more people from coming into the cryptocurrency space.
Got it. And so Ajeet, you are not with Zebpay anymore. What is the next new thing that you're looking at, and what is your future plan?
So I was with Zebpay, if you include the Indian company and then the holding company that I went to, etc., for roughly around 2 years, maybe a little more than that. But the thing is that, I have always, right at the beginning of this call, I told you that I've always been interested in, new technology. And my quest continues. I continue to associate with early stage entrepreneurs, sharing my thoughts with them, helping them as an advisor. And I think I will continue that for some more time.
Got it. And you also look at advising startups. Are there, any specific advising opportunities you help out startups, early stage startups?
So my advising of startups tends to be in two formats. I think 95% of my advice tends to have no commercial transaction in it. It generally ends up being one call or max of two. Sometimes what happens is that when I get into deeper engagement with some startups where, more frequent, deeper engagements are required, then they ask me whether they can remunerate me in some ways. Now, rightly or wrongly, my sense of how much I should be remunerated tends to be very high. Right? So, and startups definitely don't have the kind of money to be able to pay me. So some of them remunerate me by giving me a little bit of an advisory equity in their company, which at that point of time does not seem very valuable to them because they're in early stages, and it aligns our interests. So there are a very few companies with who I get into an advisory equity kind of arrangement. I'm again, like in many other things I've told you on this call, this is a very oversimplification. And on a case-to-case basis, I look at the opportunity and choose to advise some companies.
Got it. So I quickly want to do the top three. What's your favorite business book?
Ouch. I wish you had said what is your favorite book. Because business books are boring.
Well, you can talk about any fiction book.
Yeah, my favorite book is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I mean, hands down. Right? My favorite business book, I have to go back to the first entrepreneurship book I read, and I read it in the early 90s. So like 30 years ago. It was a book called The E-Myth. E-Myth, E standing for entrepreneurship. It's by Linda Gerber, if I'm not mistaken. It basically opened my eyes to what entrepreneurship is and how I had been misled into believing entrepreneurship is this grand romantic journey, which it is made out to be by people who probably don't understand it or have never been entrepreneurs themselves. So that was my first book on this topic, and hence it has the maximum influence that any business book has had on me.
Got it. And if you could go back in time when you started your entrepreneurial journey, what is the one thing you would have focused on or done anything differently?
Oh, so while I'll answer that question, let me tell you, it isn't as if I would have done one thing differently. I would have done like everything differently. Because it's very interesting when I see big celebrities, leaders around the world being interviewed, pretty much like the interview you're doing now, except that you're not doing it with a big celebrity and leader. And they are often asked, what do you regret in life, or what regret do you have? It blows my mind that every single one of them says, I have no regrets. I'm like, what, really? My life is like a sequence of regrets. How can you possibly not have regrets? Maybe what they're saying is that they did a lot of things wrong, but they're okay with it. Maybe that's what they mean. Because
maybe they've accepted it.
Yeah, they just accepted it as opposed to calling it regret and, staying up nights suffering from the consequences of that mistake. But in my case, lots of things I would do different. I think that one of the things I would do different, very different, is that so I had a certain style of working, certain expectations, certain way of leading teams, certain way of approaching risk. Right. So let us call that my unique signature style. Right. I, unfortunately, and I say this with not just regret, but with shame, I would get a lot influenced by other people who probably were wiser than me, more famous than me, were more of a celebrity. And I would try to, give up my personality, individuality, and signature style and try to learn. In hindsight, I realized that was always wrong. I have to, of course, learn new techniques. I have to learn new software and those kind of things. But my signature entrepreneurship, my style of leading, my style of being CEO is my style. And that is where I make the maximum contribution. And I should value and cherish my style and be me. This would be the biggest.
Correct. And do you have any favorite online tools, for example, Zoom, Slack?
So I have used all of them. Right now, we are using Zoom to record this. I think the most common thing I use is Gmail. I use Google Keep to do some sort of to-do lists. There is a new software which I'm presently exploring, not started using it yet. It is a new note-taking tool called Rome Research. Yeah. So I actually am trying to learn that. What happens is that the reason I don't succeed in things that I don't succeed in is because I didn't pursue them right. I didn't think hard enough. I didn't put in I was not motivated. I procrastinated. It becomes very easy for me to lean on an online tool and say, if I had a better tool, I would not procrastinate. But the tool doesn't solve it. So there are great tools. I constantly look for better and better tools, including for video conferencing, for note taking, for communication, etc. But I don't think it is the tool. I think it is the entrepreneur.
Very nice. And what is the best way people can reach out to you and know more about you?
So the really, according to me, the best way is if it's just like messaging any social platform. I'm not active on Facebook, but Twitter I'm most active. Secondarily on LinkedIn, and I do read all the messages that come to me on these places, which does not mean I necessarily reply. After that, if I think that people are, there is some merit to carrying the discussion forward, then whether it is exchanging phone numbers, email addresses, etc., I do that. My name is spelled as Ajeet Khurana. That is my handle on LinkedIn. On Twitter, I'm Ajeet, that is Ajeet K, right? So these might be the easiest way to know what I'm thinking, share some thoughts with me, and connect with me initially. From there, we can take it.
Sure, we'll put that in the show notes. Ajeet, thank you so much for coming onto the show and speaking to us. I really enjoyed speaking to you.
Thanks for listening to the Life Self-Mastery podcast, where we teach you how to start and grow your online business. For more information, visit Rohit's blog at www.lifeselfmastery.com.